why. All right, but we have a Patriots show. And Shaq and the boys call it, Shaq and Josh call it the Flying Elvis Faithful with their new co-host, the IQ, John Doucette. Of course, you'll find some other stuff on Spreaker as Sammy Sportface is less than 48 hours away from unveiling his ebook, and he's got a couple of little snippets there. We do have fantasy football as well. As, hey, what's his name, John?
What name we looking for here?
Oh, man, how could I do that, man? Hey, I don't mean this like that, folks. Oh, Chris, man. That's messed up, man, when you forget one of your people. Darryl Wilson! And his boys bring you the Fantasy Football Addict Support Group. If you're stuck on fantasy football and you're hungover and you're going through personal problems in life and fantasy football is causing you stress and really screwing up your...
See, this is why I didn't know who did this, because I don't play fantasy football, as you well know.
Oh, well then, that's good, John, because if you get hooked and it's really got you going bad, well, listen to Fantasy Football Addict Support Group and join all the boys ready to, I don't know, do what. But you want a recap of the NFL? Well, Monday is the day to give it to you, and of course, that comes from Kyle and the boys. That would be Chris and Weasel. Yeah, boy! That's what Weasel says all the time. It's called the Student of the Game. Also, pay attention on Spreaker as we have the basketball games. If you look on NGSC Sports, you'll notice that we are doing a live play-by-play audio broadcast of Nassau Community College Lions basketball. We have another game coming tomorrow, and we're playing around with a little live streaming of the ABA Jersey Express basketball team up in New Jersey. That, of course, is always taken care of by Bobby Guarente, on our sister network, I-95 Sports. Of course, the live stream and the audio broadcast are brought to you by I-95 Sports Entertainment Network and NGSC Sports. And like they say in this business, and Chris has probably been saying this for the last 72 seconds, can we get back to the damn show? So back to the show it goes. And gentlemen, here's what's next up. Chris, I'm going to throw it right back at you. Lackey Cubs.
Yeah, John Lackey signed for Cubs today for 2 years. Supposedly be between 30 and 32 million. And I think it's a great move by the Cubs to actually not only get a great picture that they can sandwich in between Arrieta and Lester, but also take him away from the Cardinals.
John, Lackey, Cubs.
I think the Cubs have now got themselves a pretty good three-man rotation to really seriously challenge for that division.
Come on, guys. You guys got to help me out. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. You guys got to help me out here. Here's what I'm looking for. I said Lackey Cubs. We're talking about Chicago Cubs. Did I miss some? Chris, we're talking about Chicago Cubs?
Yep.
Not the Chicago Cubs team that beat the Miami team in the 2015 World Series in Back to the Future. The Chicago Cubs that made it deep into the postseason last year that were beaten by my Mets, who were then slaughtered by KC, but we're not going to talk about that because we already did. Here's what I wanted to hear from one of you guys, and since I didn't, then I'm going to bring it up. The Chicago Cubs, for my whole entire life, I went to Wrigley Field in 1982. It was snowing, and I never imagined being in a baseball game that'd be snowed out, but I was there. And I wasn't worried about seeing a great baseball game. I mean, it's the Chicago Cubs. They suck. I mean, that's natural. Like, you know, beer tastes great. Liquor's a little harder. The Chicago Cubs suck.
Ralph, as Chris is going to tell you, those days are gone.
There you go. So, Chris, now what I want to hear starting from you is, here is a Chicago Cub team that is so close. Is this an important piece for next year?
It is, because Lackey gives them stability in the rotation, because the Cubs already have a good offense. And they just need more pitching, and Lackey is certainly going to do that. And he's also good friends with John Lester, so I think having both of them in the rotation is going to help the Cubs next season.
Is it enough to put?
Well, absolutely. I mean, Lackey and Lester, when they're here with the Red Sox, they did form a friendship that is now going to be reunited. You add, as I said, those three guys at the top of the rotation to go along with that young team that is an everyday team now with Chris Bryant and Schwarber and the rest of those guys and Rizzo and so forth. I mean, this is now a ball club that everyone in the Central Division now needs to really take seriously, and I think the same can be said for the National League. The Cubs are now a serious player, and everyone does need to take these guys very seriously.
You brought up a really good point there, John, because, and Chris, you know, this is serious here. I love, one of the things I love about baseball, you have it in every sport, but for me it's always really noticeable in baseball. You talked about Lackey and Lester. These are experienced veterans. Both of them champions, correct, John?
2013,
Okay.
they were together.
Both of them champions, and I always love that relationship that you see play out with a baseball team like the Chicago Cubs, a young team that, though young, you can see how primed and ready this team is, but the role that guys like Lackey and Lester, these veterans, play, and they're so key. You can go back in history. Not everyone won a world championship, but all these teams that added pieces like a Lackey and a Lester, and all of a sudden, that this could be very key in getting Chicago over that hump, and maybe it's the 2016 World Series.
Well, I think as Chris will, back me up on this, you're talking about two guys in Lackey and Lester that have won 2 world championships, not just one. And they're also going to be able to, and I think with Joe Madden being the manager of this team, it's a perfect opportunity to show the young guys not only how to become a serious contender, but the preparation and what it takes to really get over that hump and take that next step.
Chris?
Yeah, also I think for the Cubs, they're not done making moves. I think they could possibly trade Jorge Soler to the Braves to get Shelby Miller.
Now, what do the Miami Marlins do? All of a sudden, they've now decided that Jose Fernandez is now off the market. Is that something that can be taken seriously by the fan base down there, or is that just something they're saying to keep people off their backs?
I think they can take it serious, but I do think the Marlins will try to trade outfielder Marcell Ozuna during the meetings because Jeffrey Waters does not like him. So I think Ozuna is gone.
Well, gentlemen, Chris, John, and I always talk about how much pleasure and how great it's been to be able to watch sports for decades and decades. We've been able to watch some of the greatest baseball players. We miss some of the greats, obviously, growing up, and it's been fun to watch. And, when we were young, John, we, of course, were able to watch a baseball wonder in Bobby Bonds and how good of a baseball player he was, and then heard, his son, of course, followed the same path, Barry, and we know the story, the home run king, the so-called asterisk home run king. And I had no idea whatsoever, so it was absolutely a surprise to me when I reported it to John. John told me they were talking about it. I said, well, it happened. Chris, the asterisk home run king is the hitting coach down in Miami, huh?
Yeah. Barry Bonds is going to be the new Marlins hitting coach. And I think he's going to do well because the Marlins, they didn't hit well last season. So I think Bonds can impart his knowledge and actually help out some of those young players. And I think he can have a big impact on Giancarlo Stanton.
Chris, here's my question. Why does Barry Bonds want to get back into the game?
I just think he just wants to just kind of show people who he is and that he's still a good person that can actually impart some knowledge and wisdom. And I just think that the Marlins give him a good chance. Similar to how Aguirre was the hitting coach for the Dodgers last season, and now he's going to be on the bench coach for the Padres.
Is this Barry Bonds' way of trying to gain support to end up eventually in Cooperstown?
Oh, I'm sorry, we're live. Forgive me, gentlemen.
It's try, but I still don't think Bonds is going to get in now, regardless of what he does.
Hey, John, remember that old segment from the old show? For real? Thank you, John, for a flashback on For Real. No, I don't. I cannot see how, no matter what Barry Bonds would do, that would ever get him into Cooperstown. I mean, that and you know what gets me, guys, since we're talking about Cooperstown and these guys, and try to remember, I never, ever took steroids. Ever. Rafael Palmero's famous last words. These guys, you wondered back then when this was going down, John, and about the price. You knew it was going to be a heavy price. And if you're a baseball player, who couldn't possibly dream? You heard these guys, the Kansas City Royals just won the World Series, and all the interviews, each one of them, almost everyone mentioned the fact that as a little boy, dreaming of baseball, you dream of winning the World Series. And how could you not have a little extra dream and say, maybe, just maybe, I might be great enough one day to make it to Cooperstown? And I wondered at first if it was really going to have an effect, if they were really going to be kept out. John, I think they're down to their last votes, if this wasn't the last one.
I think for Bonds and Clemens, yeah, that might be true. I think they are, and then eventually it would have to be the Veterans Committee that would decide their fate. And I do wonder if Bonds is really thinking that way, that if he goes to Miami, he does his job, he stays clean, keeps his nose out of trouble, that maybe, just maybe, the Veterans Committee might say, you know what, why not?
There was another segment on one of the original shows. I'll come back with this on you, John. We used to call that segment, Are You Kidding Me?
Look, hey, you know, Barry, look, I do think that Barry Bonds still considers himself to be a Hall of Fame credential. The resume is worthy of that, and he's probably right. If you take away the steroid aspect of it, certainly his resume is more than worthy of ending up in Cooperstown.
John.
I do think that Bonds is trying to create an avenue for himself to be able to at least be reconsidered for the idea once the voting part is over.
John, hey Chris, this guy was a Hall of Famer before he ever. Let me say this the right way. Chris, Barry Bonds was a Hall of Famer before he ever took a sip from his mother's nipple. He didn't have to take anything else. All he had to do was get out of his diapers, go to school, graduate, go to sleep, and go to the Hall of Fame and live forever. And especially him, you know, McGuire, Canseco, none of those guys, Sosa, none of those guys were having Hall of Fame careers. They needed the juice to get to that level. He was already there, and I wonder, you know, the younger generation who didn't get to see some of these other greats, they look at these guys today. Hey, Chris, the game has changed. Dog, they ain't no more 4 guys with 50-plus home runs, 7 guys with 40-plus, about 27 guys with over 130 RBIs. It's changed. It's changed.
It has changed. And also, one more thing on Arizona, they're still interested in Mike Leake as well.
The what?
They're still interested in signing Mike Leake.
Signing?
Which team? Which team?
Arizona.
Oh, Arizona, okay. And the Diamondbacks are willing to spend money here, which I think is very interesting because they hadn't really demonstrated that willingness in recent years. So the idea of them losing has finally burned some bridges in Arizona, and they've decided that they're going to take a shot at it.
Well, you spending like that and you making moves like that, you better be making those moves to get yourself in first place because...
Well, look, the San Diego Padres would be the example. All the money they spent last year, the moves that they made, it didn't work out for them, and look what they ended up doing. They ended up breaking it up. We'll see what happens with the Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I feel bad because and guys, you know what I'm curious about?